My name is Marilyn Carter. I am 64 years old, and after a lifetime of hard work and quiet endurance, I thought I finally understood what peace felt like. For 3 decades, I worked 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to raise my son Tyler on my own. When I finally bought a small farmhouse in the countryside, it felt like the first thing in my life that truly belonged to me. But everything changed on the night of Tyler's wedding. In the middle of a crowded reception hall, under the glow of crystal lights, his bride, Brianna, lifted a microphone and announced that she was generously allowing me to move into her old apartment. People applauded as if she had just performed an act of charity. What no one in that room knew was this. While I stood there smiling through the humiliation, Brianna's family was already inside my farmhouse, unpacking their suitcases and settling into the home I had spent 30 years building for myself. The wedding venue looked like a scene pulled straight from a magazine cover. Chandeliers floated above the ballroom like frozen fireworks, and every table shimmered with gold-trimmed plates and tall vases of white roses. Guests in designer suits and sparkling dresses drifted across the room, laughing softly, sipping champagne, admiring the glamour of it all. It was the kind of place where people walked carefully, as if they were afraid their footsteps might crack the marble floor. I arrived quietly, wearing the simple navy dress I had sewn by hand and adjusted more times than I could count. I stood near the entrance for a moment, searching for my son. Tyler had always been easy to spot in a crowd, ever since he was a boy, but tonight he was surrounded by Brianna's friends, by photographers, by the buzz of a world that had never belonged to me. When he finally noticed my presence, he waved quickly before turning back to his new wife. I told myself it was simply the chaos of the event. After all, every wedding is hectic. Every bride and groom are distracted. I took my seat, expecting that at some point he would come over, check on me, or at least make sure I felt included. Instead, the first wave of unease hit when I realized the seating arrangement placed me at a table far from the immediate family. I sat with 2 distant acquaintances from Brianna's workplace, who barely knew my name. Her parents, Robert and Linda Sterling, were centered at the main table alongside the couple, sitting there with confidence that did not match their actual standing in the family. I told myself it was an oversight. Someone probably made a mistake with the placement. These things happen. But the second wave of unease was harder to ignore. Throughout the evening, servers brought dishes I did not recognize and drinks I could not pronounce. Brianna floated across the room like a swan decorated in diamonds. Her makeup was flawless, her smile trained, her posture regal. When her eyes passed over me, there was a flicker of something cold. Not hatred, not resentment, but a kind of dismissal, as if I were a detail in the room, like one of the candles or a napkin folded on a plate. Then came the moment that changed everything. The music slowed, the lights dimmed, Brianna stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, her dress glowing beneath the spotlights. The room fell into an anticipatory hush. I leaned forward slightly, expecting a sentimental toast, maybe a story about how she and Tyler met. Instead, she said my name. I felt hundreds of eyes shift toward me. Brianna smiled at the crowd and said in her honeyed, smooth voice that as the new wife in the family, she was generously offering me a place to live. She explained that she had decided I would move into her old apartment in the city so that Tyler and she could start their married life without worrying about me living alone at the farmhouse. People clapped. They clapped as if Brianna had done something noble, something grand, something selfless. I sat perfectly still. The applause washed over me like a cold wave. My hands tightened in my lap. My heart thudded painfully inside my chest. Then Brianna continued. She said that her parents and her sister had already gone to the farmhouse to help settle in and make sure everything was ready for me when I arrived after the honeymoon. Settle in. Ready for me. My vision blurred for a moment. My breath caught in my throat. And then the final blow. Tyler nodded at her words. He did not correct her. He did not look confused. He did not push back. He simply agreed. In that moment, I understood the truth. What Brianna announced was not generosity, it was a replacement, a displacement, a quiet removal of me from the home I had spent my life building. I stood slowly, the room spinning slightly, and I said the only thing I could manage. No one lives in my farmhouse without my consent. Long before the wedding, long before Brianna and her polished family entered our lives, it had been just me and Tyler against the world. I met my husband, Michael, when I was 22. He worked at a small manufacturing plant outside the city, and he had a smile that made hard days feel lighter. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. Our home was a rented apartment with peeling wallpaper and a kitchen that echoed when we laughed. Life was simple, but it was ours. Everything changed when Tyler was 5. Michael fell ill, and within months, he was gone. I remember the night I told Tyler that his father would not be coming home again. He clung to my waist and cried until he fell asleep against my shoulder. In that moment, I made myself a promise. I would raise my son to have every opportunity Michael never had. I would carry both roles, mother and father, even if it cost me every ounce of strength I had. The years that followed were a blur of work and exhaustion. I cleaned offices from 6 in the morning until noon. Then I worked as a cashier at a grocery store until evening. On weekends, I baked bread and pies to sell at the farmer's market. Every dollar mattered. Every overtime shift meant one more step towards stability for Tyler. When Tyler excelled in school, I felt a pride that made the long nights bearable. When he was accepted into an engineering program, I cried tears no one saw. I took out a small loan to help cover his books. I cooked simple meals to save money. I patched my own clothes instead of buying new ones. And when he graduated, I sat in the front row, my hands shaking, knowing that all the years of sacrifice had led to that moment. The farmhouse came later. It was not large, but it was perfect for me. The wooden porch creaked in a way that reminded me of old country songs. The air smelled of pine and fresh soil. For the first time in my life, I had a place that didn't depend on someone else, a place I could breathe, a place I had earned. That house was more than a building. It was the final proof that I had survived the years that tried to break me, that I had kept my promise to Tyler, even when I had nothing left to give. It held the memories of every sacrifice, every long night, every quiet prayer. Which is why, standing at that wedding, hearing Brianna describe my future as if my home were a pawn on their board, something twisted deep inside me. They did not know what that farmhouse cost me. They did not know who I became in order to build it, and they had no right to claim it as theirs. Looking back, the warning signs were always there, subtle at first, like distant thunder before a storm. The Sterling family entered Tyler's life with polished smiles and an ease that came from living in a world far more comfortable than ours. They spoke softly, but carried an air of certainty, the kind that suggested they were used to being obeyed. Linda Sterling, Brianna's mother, was the first to reveal the cracks beneath the surface. During an early dinner at their home, she tilted her head and asked how many acres my farmhouse sat on. Her tone was casual, but her eyes were sharp, focused. When I answered, she nodded slowly, as if assessing the value of a piece of property she might want to acquire. Robert Sterling, Brianna's father, carried a quieter form of ambition. He talked frequently about his past business ventures, always describing them as temporarily paused or unfairly hindered. I had dealt with enough customers in my cashier years to recognize the tone of a man who had lost more money than he cared to admit. Then there was Tessa, Brianna's younger sister. She drifted in and out of rooms without purpose. She mentioned several times that her lease was ending and sighed dramatically how expensive living alone had become. Each time she glanced at Tyler, as if hoping he would offer a solution. Tyler did not seem to notice the subtext. He was enchanted by Brianna's confidence, by her family's sophistication, by the effortless way they made him feel included. He had grown up without extended relatives, without the kind of holiday gatherings he saw in movies. The Sterlings gave him that fantasy, and he embraced it. But I noticed everything. The lingering questions about my home, the way conversations shifted whenever Tyler walked into the room, the subtle comments suggesting that I should not live alone at my age. I told myself they were harmless. I was wrong. I left the wedding before the cake was even cut. I told no one goodbye. I simply walked out of the ballroom feeling the weight of 100 eyes on my back. The night air outside was cool, but my hands were trembling as I unlocked my car. I drove in silence, the headlights carving a narrow path through the dark country roads. Every mile that passed, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. When I turned onto the gravel drive leading to my farmhouse, I saw something that stopped my breath. The front gate was open wide. Lights glowed from every window, bright and careless. My home, which I always kept warm and quiet, looked loud and occupied. I slowed the car, unable to process what I was seeing. I stepped out and heard laughter drifting through the open kitchen window, laughter that did not belong to my home. Laughter that did not belong to my life. I pushed open the front door. It was unlocked. Inside, suitcases lined the hallway. Shoes I had never seen were scattered on the floor. A jacket hung over the back of my dining chair. The scent of expensive perfume clashed with the familiar smell of pine and old wood. I turned the corner and found them. Linda stood at my stove, stirring a pot of soup as if she had cooked there all her life. Robert sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through his phone as though he were waiting for room service. Tessa leaned against the counter, eating strawberries from a bowl I only brought out on holidays. For a moment, none of them noticed me. It was as if I had stepped into a scene where I did not belong, in a house that no longer felt like mine. When Linda finally looked up, her smile was warm in a rehearsed way. "Oh, Marilyn," she said. "We thought you would be here sooner. We wanted to get settled in before your honeymoon move. It is easier to adjust to a new home when people help you prepare." Help me prepare. Settle in. Move. The words hit me like blows. I studied myself and asked why they were in my house. Linda glanced at Robert, then back at me. "Well, Tyler told us you agreed. He said you were ready for a change and that the apartment would be better for you." I felt heat rise in my chest. My voice shook, but I spoke clearly. "I never agreed to anything, and you need to leave." They exchanged glances, not of guilt, but of annoyance, as if I were interrupting their evening. Tessa rolled her eyes. Linda tried to maintain her polite tone. "Marilyn, let us not make this difficult. Tyler said it was settled." In that moment, I understood the full truth. They were not guests, they were invaders, and they believed my own son had given them permission to take my home. I stood taller. "You need to leave now." I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply walked past them, stepped outside, and closed the door behind me. My hands were shaking, but my mind had never been clearer. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. There was only one person I trusted to tell me the truth without hesitation: Patrick Coleman. Patrick had been our family attorney years earlier, back when Michael and I were trying to sort out life insurance paperwork. He was steady, patient, and honest. After Michael passed, Patrick handled the transfer of documents with a quiet respect that never left my memory. I had not spoken to him in years, but I knew he was the one person who could ground me in this moment. He answered on the second ring. "Marilyn," he said, "what is wrong?" I took a slow breath and told him everything. The announcement at the wedding, the stirrings inside my house, the claim that Tyler had given them permission, the assumption that I would move into an apartment I had never seen. Patrick listened without interrupting. When I finished, he spoke with calm authority. "Marilyn, the property is in your name alone. No one, not even your son, can grant others the right to live there without your permission. This is a trespassing situation. They have no legal standing." My shoulders lowered with relief I had not expected. I asked him what I should do. "Give them a clear deadline to leave. 48 hours is standard and reasonable. If they refuse, you call law enforcement. I will back you up with documentation if necessary." When I re-entered the house, the stirrings looked up as if nothing had changed. Linda offered me a bowl of the soup she was cooking. Robert asked if Tyler had called me yet. Tessa continued to eat strawberries unfazed. I stood in the doorway and delivered the message. "You have 48 hours to pack your things and leave my home. After that, the police will handle it." Linda straightened, her polite smile fading. Marilyn, you cannot mean that. This is Tyler's decision too. My voice did not tremble. This is my house. His decisions do not override my rights. That evening, Tyler called me. His tone was sharp, filled with frustration I had never heard from him before. Mom, you are being dramatic. Brianna's family needs a place. Why are you being so selfish? Something inside me hardened. I raised you alone, I said. I sacrificed everything I had, but generosity is mine to offer, not yours to give away. He went silent. I ended the call. For the first time in years, I chose myself. The 48 hours passed slowly, each minute stretching out like an unanswered question. I kept expecting the Stirrings to knock on my door and apologize, or at the very least, acknowledge that they had crossed a boundary no decent person would dare cross. But they did not pack. They did not prepare. They carried on as though my deadline meant nothing. On the morning the deadline expired, I approached the house and found Linda in my living room flipping through one of my photo albums. Robert was stretched out on my couch watching television. Tessa had taken over the guest bedroom and was painting her nails on my quilt. None of them looked concerned. When I reminded them that their time had run out, Linda sighed as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Marilyn, she said, we are not leaving. Tyler will talk to you. Once he does, you will understand that this is what is best for everyone. I did not argue. I stepped outside, pulled out my phone, and made the call Patrick had told me to make. The police arrived within 15 minutes. 2 officers in crisp uniform stepping onto the porch with steady confidence. I handed them the deed and identification. They studied the documents carefully and nodded. One officer asked me to wait outside while they spoke to the Stirrings. From where I stood, I could hear muffled voices rising inside the house. Linda's tone shifted from indignant to frantic. Robert insisted it was all a misunderstanding. Tessa claimed Tyler had promised them the space. The officers repeated the same sentence, firm and unyielding. This property belongs to Marilyn Carter. You are occupying it without permission. You must leave. When the officers escorted them out, the Stirrings glared at me as though I had wronged them. But I felt no shame, no guilt, only a steady, quiet relief. Once they were gone, I changed every lock on the property. I installed new security cameras. I replaced the old alarm system with one that would notify me instantly of any intrusion. As the sun set behind the trees that evening, the farmhouse felt still again. It felt like mine again. For the first time since the wedding, I could breathe. In the weeks that followed, life at the farmhouse settled into a peaceful rhythm again. The greenhouse flourished, the solar panels cut my bills in half, my mornings were quiet, filled with the scent of herbs and the soft hum of the wind across the fields. In the evenings, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the sun dip behind the line of maple trees. It felt like the closing of one long chapter and the steady beginning of another. But healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days the ache returned, a reminder of words spoken too sharply and wounds that had not yet closed. Other days I thought about Tyler as a little boy, running barefoot across the yard, laughing as if the world were nothing but open space. Those memories made forgiveness feel possible, even if trust would take longer. One night, as I walked through the garden, I came to a quiet understanding. I had spent most of my life giving everything I had, my time, my energy, my dreams, my heart, and for years I believed that sacrifice was what made me worthy. But standing alone in the fading light, listening to the soft rustle of the trees, I realized something I had never allowed myself to believe. Worthiness is not earned by giving yourself away. It's claimed by protecting the parts of your life that matter most, your safety, your dignity, your peace. My home had become a symbol of that truth, not because of the land or the walls or the things inside it, but because defending it meant defending myself. It meant choosing a life where respect was not optional and where boundaries were not apologies. As I locked the door that night and turned off the final light, I felt a calm certainty settle inside me. Whatever came next with Tyler would come slowly, naturally, on terms that honored both of us. Reconciliation was possible, but only if it grew from honesty rather than obligation. And as for the rest of the world, my message was simple: protect your peace, stand up for yourself, even when your voice shakes. Never let guilt or pressure convince you to surrender what you have worked for. And when someone tries to rewrite your boundaries, remember this: your life is yours, your choices are yours, and your story is still yours to write.